It's came back and started to spread again. Late 2022, my doctor of 9 years called me and said, "Diana, we've been fighting to save your eye. It's time to shift, to fight for
Mhm.
your life."
Welcome back, everyone. Today's guest is someone whose story doesn't just inspire, it also slows you down and recenters you. She's an executive leader, a woman of faith, a mom, and the author of Uniquely Imperfect, Uniquely Qualified. But what makes her story powerful isn't her resume, it's how she's chosen to show up throughout her life in difficult times. She's walked through adversity most people have hoped they would never face, and instead of letting it define her, she's allowed it to refine her, shaping how she leads, how she serves, and how she shows up for other people. She doesn't just talk about courage, she walks the walk. She lives it. Diana Fritz, welcome to More Than Before. It's such an honor to have you on today.
Nathan, it's great to be here. That was a humbling introduction, so thank you.
Well, you humble. I feel like you humble a lot of people when it comes to a lot of aspects of your life. You're very accomplished. You've done many things in your life. Um, you have worked yourself up the corporate ladder. You are a mom who's raised two really great boys. Great marriage. Like there's a lot of things in your life that you have really focused on, and I think you run the race of life well. And so I'm excited to learn from you, to learn about your story. I'd love to kind of jump back into the origin story of who Diana is. You grew up in Pennsylvania, right? What was life like as a little girl in Pennsylvania?
Yes, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I was born in Allentown, so if you know the Billy Joel song, Allentown, right? You can, uh, put a song to that. And my, family was a really strong connection growing up, so we lived about a few hours from my grandparents' house, and, most weekends or weeks during the summer, we would spend time on their farm and spend a lot of time with my grandparents, which was a blessing, and my cousins. So the whole connected family was a big deal. Um, my parents, great, people of faith, also believed in working hard. So my kids look at me when I say, Saturday doing chores on the weekend. I'm like, "You have no idea." I would get up at, like, 6 AM on a Saturday and go out and, like, pick, like, strawberries. They would plant thousands of strawberry plants, and whatever it was, right? Like, you have a whole different thing that you miss, but lots of lessons around, hard work and, family, and just being together and appreciating each other.
When you think of home, when you think of those earlier years of life, like what's the vivid memory that sticks out to you? Like I love the strawberry farm, like the picking strawberries because I can see my red hands, I can smell the stems of the strawberry because everyone always thinks like they think about the strawberry itself, but they don't think about the stem of the strawberry. Like that's really what you start to smell after hours of picking strawberries. I'm curious, what are some more of those memories of your youth that you remember of going, like,
Mm.
what really takes you back?
Yeah. It's a lot of my memories that are probably the most vivid are at my grandparents' like farm, and Sunday dinners where everybody, the whole extended family, would come over after church and sit around the big table, have dinner together, play games afterwards, or those holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas, similar cadence, similar thing there. So just a lot of connectedness and spending time together. And we have lots of good stories around, it would be our great grandmother would be there, right? So she would pretend she would play games with us, and we know she couldn't play the game, right? But we would play along, right? And so it's just fun, just to get together with my family today. Like I was in Pennsylvania over Christmas with my brother and his wife and my sister and her husband and all their kids and my parents. And just, you kind of talk about those memories and those laughs that you've had over the years. My grandparents are gone, at least that side of the family. I still have a grandmother that's 90 that's still alive. But there's just so many memories that spark you back. to those roots, right? And to what you remember about learning about family and, the legacy that, our grandparents left for us,
Yeah.
so
I love that it's funny because this last Christmas with our kids, I was thinking about that of like the traditions that we grew up with and all the things that we remember, all the things that our parents did to create a special atmosphere during holidays specifically. And I was taken back a moment because I thought about it and I was like, oh, it's now my turn to start either continuing those traditions, things that maybe I hold dear that were magical to me. Do I continue those with my kids, or do I shift them and do a different thing? And so it's kind of
yeah.
interesting as you were kind of mentioning that because I was like, oh, that's interesting because now you're kind of in the phase of your boys are getting older and you're thinking back and you're going, wow, like those were the memories. And there's almost like the question of like, I wonder what they're gonna do. I wonder how they'll continue on tradition. You're kind of in the middle of both of those dynamics, which is really cool. Your grandparents were a powerful teaching moment in your life. I'm curious, what were some of those powerful teaching lessons that you remember? Whether that was your grandma or whether that was your grandpa, what were the powerful
Yeah.
lessons that you remember and still carry on today?
No, my grandmother, Jean, is some I wrote a chapter in the book about her because oftentimes, people will mention, "Well, Diana, we hear your story and how you're striving to be, courageous and a victor, not a victim through this cancer journey. But how did you learn that, right? What's the foundation?" And faith is a big part of that foundation. And my grandmother was like my example of Jesus on earth. She was a beautiful woman. She laughed. She smiled. She loved everybody. And so even if somebody would harm her, offend her, she was still going to find the best in them. And we just had, so many stories and memories of her and the example of faith that she set. And I can remember at her funeral, I was standing beside the casket, just kind of holding her hand, and people came up to me and said, "Diana, you have her smile." And I'd never heard that or remember that being mentioned to me before, but, that made me pause, and then I went, "Okay, I am honored with that compliment, and that is a legacy of hers, right, that I can work on continuing, right, to shine through that smile." Um so there's a scenario about my grandmother. My grandfather worked really hard. He often did 2 jobs to take care of he had five boys and then, a farm and plenty of grandkids, and he was always, a great supporter of work, and I remember one of my last conversations with him before he passed away, um, I forget what we were talking about, but I would get, critique sometimes as like an executive and a mom of, "Diana, you work too much," right? Or that type of thing, and I was talking about that with them, and he said, "Well, I would get told that too, but I would just say, 'When you would like to pay my bills, you can critique me.'" And I was like, "I like that, that's pretty funny."
Well, it is funny because everyone is always has something to say, but not everyone has the full context of everything going
Right.
on. My
Yeah.
wife and we were just talking about this last night because we're thinking, there's things that we'd like to shift around in life. There's things that we would like to do differently, but we just can't. Like if we, if we did specifically what we want, we would not survive. We'd lose the house. Like, and yes, there is an element of trusting God in that, but there's also an element of wisdom in that of going, well, maybe that's not the wise thing to do that specific thing. To maybe
Right.
maybe it's a few years out or maybe it's a decade out from implementing those changes. So, personality-wise, who were you as a young girl? Like, were you the bubbly girl? Were you studious? I mean, I know you were an athlete, you used to play basketball.
Yep.
What kind of person, were you growing up? Like, what was your demeanor? Especially, I know that you're a DISC certified personalities person.
Yes.
So you recognize personalities probably better than most people. Who were you as a kid?
Well, I was a middle child, so I think that is kinda interesting, and there's a lot of studies, right, that say the middle child is the one often trying to be the peacemaker, right, and connecting everybody together, and I am on the DISC profile, I'm an S, right? I'm the steady, the one that wants team and everybody to get along, so I find that kinda interesting, because I've been probably living that. I certainly did have moments. I was, as a middle child, I would get jealous of things that my sister got to do or my brother, right? So I always had my moments there. But I was often the peacemaker, the one trying to smile, make people laugh, and bring some calmness, I would say, to different things happening within across life. As an athlete, um, basketball was my favorite sport. I played soccer too. And my coach was really great at challenging us to be good teammates, to hold each other accountable, and to be committed and to work on that mental toughness and mental resilience. And so there's many great lessons there, but to me, it was always important that the team won and that the team did well together. He wanted to graduate high school when I was supposed to. I was determined to graduate a year early when I was 16. And, if you see Diana, you could hit the 1,000 point list and that type of thing. And I was like, I really don't care about that. That was not really that important to me, which ties to disc as well, right? I want the team to win, right? So those are just some nuggets, I suppose, of who I was as a younger child or athlete and what stands out to me now looking back.
Yeah. What did you dream of doing when you were a kid?
Yeah. That always makes me laugh. I think I had a few things. One was to be a singer, which I can't really sing, so that's good. That didn't
S-
happen.
Small problem.
Um, yeah, and the other one was like a professional basketball player. That was kind of out there. And then I think a third thing was I just always had this idea of showing up like in a big office building in a suit, right? Like just having that type of, you know, persona. I hate to wear suits now, but I don't mind showing up in different spaces, but
So you graduate high school. How does the next steps of your life start to send you into a trajectory of success and really achievement, because you really started to do some pretty amazing things and climbing up the corporate ladder. Like it's quite amazing, your resume. How did you get to, being an executive, being a president of a company?
I never I mean, I didn't think that's where I was gonna be, right? When I left,
Yes.
graduated, college high school. I went to college, early because I wanted to play basketball, and so I went to Messiah College in Grantham, Pennsylvania, which is where my sister was, and I tore my ACL within a few weeks after the team was solidified and that type of thing, which that's, a knee injury, that's a season-ending injury. And, I still, use that time to connect with the team and be a part of the team. And I then retore the same ACL a year later when I was on the team again. But that helped me to connect with people within the athletic department and other coaches that helped me to identify a major. So I had an undergraduate degree in exercise science, which before that I was kind of undecided. I do nothing with that degree today, but it had connected me to the next step in the journey. And I think that's what's important. I don't think many people think, well, I have a degree in this, right? It limits me. We can learn many lessons no matter what role or job we're in that can apply to the next one. We just have to make the most of what we have in front of us. I was at the time like reading Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning when I was first injured. And so that was a really impactful book for me where I thought, tearing my ACL was like a knock your socks off moment, right? For me, which little did I know, like that was nothing. Um, but then it felt big. But then And his quote, "No matter what happens to me, nobody can steal my freedom to choose how I respond." And that has been a key lesson that I learned from there, right? My mindset, how I respond, nobody can take that from me. I can not be able to play college basketball, but I still get to choose how I respond and how I show up. And that was a key life lesson, right? Because I've needed that multiple times since then. Um, so then I graduated from Messiah with a degree in exercise science. I was intending to go to Temple University in Philadelphia for a grad assistantship and to do a master's in athletic administration. I wanted to be an athletic director. And, that fell through kind of at the last moment, so my advisor, who was also somebody I had gotten to know due to my knee injury, he connected me with Palm Beach Atlantic, which is in West Palm Beach, Florida. They had an opening for a sports information director as, like, an internship, but you could also get your master's, they would pay for your master's. So that was my shift from Pennsylvania to Florida. And that was a great 4 years, like, working there, traveling with sports teams, and getting my master's degree. And then I ended up moving to Daytona Beach, Florida, and interviewed for a few jobs within athletic departments, but nothing really worked out. And so I just switched and went, "Okay, well, what can I do?" Right? So I started as an American Express financial advisor, which, they pitched it to me as it's a great way to help people. Okay, but it's pretty hardcore, phone sales to get you to help somebody. But I did that for a little while. I learned a lot about, selling and tough conversations and presenting, but it wasn't for me. And then, but I met somebody doing that, and that led to a conversation and shifting me over to work for DME, which was a direct marketing company. And so that's really like during that time frame, I was also very much into continuing to develop myself. So John Maxwell and content were important to me. And so that began a 17-year career at a company, which within a few years, I was a part of the executive team. And then as the company spun off and created an automotive division, then I was had the opportunity to be a part owner and a part of that executive team and just be on that journey. And my learned quickly that I had a passion around the people. And so whether it was customers or employees. And so I always looked for ways to bring professional and personal development into my team and into my workplace, and just looked for ways to, serve people. When I think back through that journey and that 17 years or after, I haven't submitted many resumes to apply for a job. A lot of them have just come to me because of the work I was doing and what I was just giving my best at what I was doing, and it led to God putting the next step in front of me. So that I feel is an incredible blessing as well.
Well, I love it because I think a lot of us want to plan every single step. We have the big vision of what we want to do. And your story really is one of just going to the next thing, the next thing that seems like it's almost the obvious thing. In hindsight, it is, but in the moment, you're kind of taking a constant step of faith. Like all of the things that you've done have been a constant step of faith of going, okay, Lord, if this is what you're calling me to, then I'll step forward and I will be faithful. Be faithful to me as I step forward. And this faithfulness, it continued over and over and over. And it's funny too, because I love that you bring up the Viktor Frankl book because it's truly an incredible book. I find it fascinating that you read it at such a young age.
Yeah.
I think I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning when I was in my late 20s. And I struggled to get through that book. It took me probably a good 3 years to read it. And when I say read it, I mean, I kept reading the same paragraph over and over and over. And I was like, I do not understand anything that he's talking about. And then one day, it was just out of the blue. It was a Sunday morning. I picked up the book and I read it from cover to cover. And I was
Mm.
like, this is amazing. And you pulled out the one thing that I always like to pull out of that book, which is the idea that you get to define the reality of what you're going through. That circumstances are going to happen to you, but you have to choose that. So I am mesmerized that you read it, one, at such a young age, but two, that you had the wisdom to really take that and start to apply that into your life and to think through that. So you're on this stratosphere movement of success in business, in life. You've got two young kids at the time, and then all of a sudden you have something happen that really seems to derail life. Tell everyone a little bit about what that was and how did that start to shift perspective for you?
Yeah, no, and I sorry, I just wanna mention first, so I didn't have a choice but to read that book because it was a requirement in my English literature class. Just to, I didn't have a choice, I had to read
No,
it
we're
and
gonna
talk.
say that you just picked it up one day. You saw it and it just called me. No.
So no, my, it'll 12 years ago, actually, so this is my anniversary month of finding out that I had a rare form of cancer near my left eye, so it was 12 years ago in January, and at that time, I was a single mom, had to make a tough decision to step away from, uh the married situation because that was what was healthier for my boys and for me. And I was an executive, and we were also working on positioning the company for sale. So, if anybody has gone through that, you have your day job as the executive, and then you have your night job prepping all the content that's needed for those that are working to sell your company. And then a mom of two young boys, so about 2 and 4.5. So I had a lot of hats to wear. Um, I I wish I wish I knew the name of the urgent care doctor that, I went to see him for a sinus infection. He looked at my left eye, which at that time I had a left eye, I don't have one now. The little pink, caruncle, which is in the corner of your eye, was, bumpy, and he challenged me to go to an ophthalmologist, and, I was like, "Okay." In my head, I don't have time for this, but I did, and, I'm thankful I did because otherwise the cancer would have continued to grow and I wouldn't have known it. The doctor I met, Dr. Hal Kushner, is a Vietnam prisoner of war and a dear friend, but he was the one that first diagnosed the cancer, and then he sent me quickly to Bascom Palmer, which is in Miami, so that's 4 hours from me. Um, and I found out quickly it was gonna lead to multiple surgeries. This isn't, when it's a rare form of cancer, there's not a lot of treatment out there, right? You need to go to the number one place in the world and be flexible. Um, so that wasn't, what I was expecting to do that year. I turned 40 that year, and I had all these plans of things that I wanted to do, a missions trip, be a better mom. Cancer wasn't there, right? Um, but I was reminded quickly, right, of that Viktor Frankl, "No matter what happens, I still get to choose, like, how I respond." And it made me go from, "Okay, why me, God?" to, "Okay, God, like, why me? Like, who do you want me to meet in these hospitals, in these walls, in these doctors' offices? Because otherwise I wouldn't be here, right? I can't just walk into University of Miami or Sylvester Health or Bascom Palmer without a ID and a badge, right? So who do we get to go bless together? Um, I had so many people that stepped in to help me with my kids. My parents took them for about a month when I was having multiple surgeries because I didn't want to scare them. They were little. And I knew I wasn't going to look great, right? I looked like a battered wife. I had my eye closed, like almost stitched shut for 4 months that year. Um, and so that was different getting used to live with one eye, I guess it prepared me for today. Um, and then I went about 5 years cancer-free, and, life felt kinda normal. I remarried during that time frame, my kids were getting older, and so that was good, and I was about ready to celebrate the 5-year mark, and I felt a bump near my left eye, and, went down to see the doctors quickly, we operated quickly, and felt like everything was we were good, and we still were retaining the eye, But then in 2021, it's came back and started to spread again. And I think it was late 2022, my doctor of 9 years called me and said, Diana, we've been fighting to save your eye. It's time to shift, to fight for your life. And that, will make anybody go, Okay. It was one of my worst fears. Like when I first found out I had cancer near my head, is it in my brain? Like that was one of the first questions I asked when I was in Miami. And here it had grown behind my eye and it was resting on the lining of my brain. Um, but we, navigated through. I did some, I've gone through, I don't know, multiple surgeries, different variations of chemo. And the surgery was like a 10 to 12-hour surgery to remove the eye with 4 different surgeons. And I can remember processing that. It was going to be Easter weekend. And I was going, okay, God, I have never not been with my children on Easter. And I just got that subtle reminder, okay, but like I died on a cross for you on
Mm.
Easter. Like you can do this, right? And so I'm like, okay, humbling, we can do this. So now I have this unique look about me. A skin flap from my leg is what covering up where my eye was. And, I'll have people ask, well, Diana, why don't you hide that? Or why don't you wear a a pirate patch or something like that? I
God
mean, I
didn't make me a
could.
pirate, right?
I could, and that was actually one of the jokes I had had. I'm like, "Okay, God, I can be a pirate. Like, if you want my eye, like, I can be a pirate." But there's nothing comfortable about wearing a pirate patch all the time. So I have just been, you know what? This is who I am, and he can use my scar to shine, and it's certainly something that sparks discussion. So
Yeah. How has that impacted your boys as they perceive people and how they value people? Because it's something that I'm always trying to teach my children. There's people that we'll see walking down the street and maybe they have an amputee arm, or maybe they're missing a leg, or maybe there's something off. We have a common mentor who said, kids on the playground are the meanest because they find anything and then they create a song about it, right? Like, and it's not that they're trying to be mean. It's just kids tend to pick out the things that are different.
yeah.
God creates us in different ways, and things differentiate us from other people. And so I'm curious, how has that impacted the way that your boys see the world, just based off of having a mom who's gone through that?
Yeah. No, children have a skill of curiosity and they ask questions that adults won't ask, which um, I really try to embrace that and connect to that because when we lose our curiosity, we're missing out, right, on connecting with people, or potentially we get furious instead of getting curious, right? So I really work hard to, when kids are looking at me funny, I'll pause and say, "Hi, how are you?" Right, and smile at them, and let them ask me questions. And I'll, say to my, preschoolers that I see every week at chapel, when you see me, be thankful you have 2 eyes. I'm thankful I have one. And we'll just go through this little banter. My children have like watched that. So the majority of their growing up years, they saw, I worked to be a mom that stayed positive. I didn't want to be a victim. I wanted them to see that you can navigate through adversity and, you can do it with a smile, right? And, I think one of my um, blessings, right, is when they're with their friends, and their moms will say, I asked Grayson about how you're doing, and he mentioned that you're just always so positive and strong, and you still show up. And so I love that because he probably doesn't ever tell me that directly, but to hear that indirectly, okay, I'm doing that. They also will come to hear me speak when they have an opportunity to, and they'll critique me, which is fine. I'll do it, or I'll ask them like, what story should I tell? What do you think is most impactful? And to make them a part of the story or the journey. They are very aware of when we're walking around, so like, "Mom, they're really staring at you." And I'll just kinda laugh and, smile, and it makes me, look for opportunities to talk to people, but I also have on my list I have my marketing team is working on some stickers for me to just give to people that stare at me, to just give them something so that they can understand why. Like, I mean, I don't mind. I might as well use the stares to, help impact them, so
I was thinking of like, man, what would be a really great sticker that you could hand to someone who's just staring at you? I was thinking of like, it costs a lot of money to look this beautiful, or
Yeah.
something, or something like it's not natural, or I don't know. I love the sense of levity that you have about life because I think levity really is important because we really do take ourselves too seriously. We take life too seriously. I think God has a sense of humor in a lot of things when we look back on life and we kind of point to things and we go, "Yeah, I see what you were doing there. I can kind of see the laugh line that goes throughout there." How how has humor and levity helped you to really connect with people throughout your life?
Well, I mean, it has helped me a lot. I think when I think through being younger, my grandmother she laughed a lot, right? She laughed at all different things, and so she was known for her laughter. You could hear her laughing like forever away, right? And so that's been a huge impact on me. With my journey with cancer, even when I had an eye and it was all bruised, my husband, who was my friend at the time, he would get the worst stares because people thought he was beating me,
It was
right? So we would, because 'cause I'd be all bruised and battered, and we would just have fun with that, right? Like, and just smile and laugh because why not laugh at it, right? Why not laugh at it? I, when I had my surgery, I also lost my sense of smell because they took out my olfactory nerve because they think that's how the cancer may have traveled, like, behind to my brain. So I didn't have much smell, and, I was helping my son with his homework and flipping the pages, right? And I'm flipping the pages into my blind spot because I can't really see that well to the left, and there's a candle over there, and
oh
I'm
no.
flipping, and I'm, like, burning his homework, but I can't smell it. And so, finally, he realizes what's happening. He's like, "Mom, you're, like, burning my homework." And we just laughed about that, got the fire out, and I was like, "Well, Ben, I bet your teacher has never gotten an email. My mom burnt my homework." Like, I am sure she's never no. So, I sent her the email, and I was like, "I'm sure you've never received this email, but hopefully it makes you laugh, and we're gonna send you what's left of the homework." So you believe that this is really what happened.
Man, it's so funny. I love that. Uh, my mother during like COVID stuff, she lost her senses. She lost smell. And it's interesting because sight was also something that there was a
Oh,
moment where no, it was hearing. She had like a
hearing.
really bad tinnitus and she started to lose hearing. And it was probably like 6 months or something like that, where it was really hard for her to hear things. And it really challenged her to be appreciative of the senses that she had. And I'm curious for you, what has that taught you? Because a lot of people look at the visual pieces and they go that, the visual thing is the greatest loss. But when you talk about losing your sense of smell, losing part of your sight, we joke about the candle and burning the homework, but there's also something to that of going, there's a visual aspect that can kind of be scary too, of like, well, what if? What if? And obviously you don't want to go down that
Yeah.
train of thinking. But I'm curious, what has all of this taught you about appreciating the most basic things like a sense of smell or the sense of sight?
Yeah. No. I mean, um I use it as a reminder, as I mentioned with kids, right? When they ask me, "What happened to you?" I'm like, "Well, I want you to remember whenever you see me, right, to be really thankful you have 2 eyes. I can still see with one, but if you ever wanna feel like what it's like to be me, I'll bring a patch in for you to wear for the day." But how God made us is incredible, like, just how, your 2 eyes, like, work together to coordinate everything. It was often harder for me to navigate with one eye when 12 years ago, when the left eye was still there, but it was closed. So it was stitched shut and it was trying to work, but it couldn't work, right? The eye couldn't open. That was almost harder for me to navigate through because the body knew it was still there, which is amazing on its own to think through how we all work. And the smell piece, I wasn't really expecting, excuse me, to lose my smell. When I went in for surgery, I knew I was losing an eye, but, that's been kinda interesting to navigate through, lots of laughs too, right? I do People will ask me, "Do you still taste?" Yeah, I still taste. I often, um, taste what I can't smell. So if somebody sprays a cologne, normally you would smell it in your nose. I'm gonna feel it in my mouth, and the skin flap is gonna light up, because of the different sensation, right? Who knows why, right? But it
Yeah.
just has me remember, right? Like, I mean, it's pretty amazing how God's made us and, how our body adapts, and to just be thankful for, what you have. I have to be conscious, right? I have a blind spot. So if I'm walking beside people, I could run into them. Going into big crowds that I'm not used to being around people, I used to just walk with confidence through the crowd. Right now, I'm going to approach it a little differently than I did, but maybe it makes me pause more. I don't know.
Well, I love it. It reminds me of a mentor of ours that says, "Walk slowly through the crowd."
Yes.
And I am curious about this because you are. It's funny because as a supportive personality style, as someone who likes to navigate the world with maybe a little bit more caution, you're also highly driven. You have a drive about you to achieve, to run to the next thing, to go. I mean, countless times in your life, God has caused you to pause, even throughout uh, your battle with cancer. Like you were still working, you were getting treatment,
Yep.
and your boss had to tell you that you needed to take a break.
Yep.
I'm curious, what is the drive right now that you're moving towards? What inspires you? What gets you up in the morning and says, "Yes, I'm excited for this day because of this." What are you driven towards right now?
No, I think it's probably, I'm going to give you a similar answer, is probably what it's been since I was in college, right? My desire, right, is to add value to people and make a positive impact. And so that seems really broad, right? But it certainly helps for perspective because I, look in the morning and say, okay, God, where do you want me to add value to today? And who is, what's there. And sometimes I reflect back on that. I don't always get to do that every day, right? We all get busy and distracted with different things. But when you approach your day with, I'm working to add value to people, um, it's not as much about me, right? It's about where I'm best skilled to add value to people and make an impact. That does work against me sometimes, right? Because I place others, right? And their priorities above mine. And that's a fine balance, right? And that's where um, I been working through going, okay, God, like what do you have for me today? Right. Not necessarily what does everybody need from me today, but what do you have for me today? And to work to navigate that way with his priority versus mine or the people around me.
Mm, I love that. Uh, Perfection is something I think as human beings we like to have in our life. We're always moving towards perfection. We want to be perfect. We want to look good. We don't want other people to talk about us in a negative way. And perfection can really cause us to stumble a lot. I'm curious. You've said that imperfection is actually a qualifier. versus or it. Let me think about that. That imperfection can actually qualify someone rather than disqualify. Because I think a lot of us think that if we have an imperfection, it's going to disqualify us from being able to do something. Why is that important for people to understand that our imperfections can actually qualify us for more than what we think?
Mm. You know, it was a great, the title to the book, right? Uniquely Imperfect, Uniquely Qualified. And that title came from some discussion with Roddy and a few others, and looking at, when I knew I was gonna be navigating through this journey, I, you know, I didn't wanna spend 6 weeks away from home in radiation treatments in Miami. Like, what was I gonna do? I wasn't working. Get up, go to radiation, have a whole day. And I, went to my doctor and said, "Well, what can I do? Who can I help? Um, do you have patients I can talk to? Like, how can I serve?" And he looked at me like I was a bit crazy at first. And he was like, "Diana, you need to heal." But then a few weeks later, he called and he's like, "Diana, I have a patient that needs to undergo a similar surgery and he needs somebody to talk to." And that, like, sparked me to go, "Okay, I have this unique journey around me, but it uniquely qualifies me to help somebody else that's gonna go through a similar journey." And so whether it's a disability, it's something you've gone through, it's, you're yeah, I have a unique look, right? There I'm not gonna find many people that look like me. But if I can learn from it, if I can let it refine me and not define me, then I can help somebody else that is going to go through a similar adversity or challenge. I can help them to move forward. And that has been a big motivator for me, right? It's not about me, right? This is a way for God to use my scars to help somebody else. I also get that I have this unique look, so I can go to the grocery store, I can go to a restaurant, they're gonna remember me. My kids, like, oh, wait, but that means I have to be a high bar, right? I can't be the grumpy person walking in the door. They're gonna remember me, right? I am not in the people pile. I am unique looking. So with that comes, some unique accountability, I suppose, in terms of how I show up.
I love that. They're gonna remember me. It's such a beautiful really gift that God has given you that no matter where you go, people are gonna remember you. Kind of goes back to the Viktor Frankl piece of you get to choose how you define how people are going to remember you, right? The life is going to hit. Just recently I was reading the story of Corey Boom, and just even her story and how the choices that we make and how we respond are so important. Early on, I'm curious because when people get a diagnosis like what you got, I'm curious, what is something that you wish people had told you, like within the first few months of your diagnosis?
That's an that's an interesting one to think about within the first few months. I suppose one of the things that I'm much more aware of now that I wasn't as much then was how much what we eat, um, some of the things we eat, right, fuel cancer, right? Like,
Mm.
so processed carbs and really help sugar, right, fuel cancer in your body. That wasn't anything that a lot of people were talking to me about then, right? It was all about, "Well, let's cut it out, and let's, cut the cancer out, remove it, and keep you moving forward." But what I put into my body wasn't anything that I was really being made to aware of then. I'm very conscious of it now, and I eat differently. I also, I probably am more physically fit than I was when I was a college athlete, because I know that, what I eat, my spiritual health, my physical strength, like those are things I can control and influence, and those help me to fight cancer.
I love that. Oh man, big sugar is gonna start coming after me now. No. Oh yeah, it's so hard because there are so many things that are in our food. Not even just like the natural food, but just so many things that are added to our foods that are so unhealthy for us, and yet they're so addictive. Um, I, what I love about your story is the aspect of faith. Faith is such a huge component of your story, from a young girl to even where you are right now. I'm curious, how has your faith changed over the years? Like maybe when did you really start to own your faith? When did it become your own and you started to walk with it and you started to develop and have a relationship with Christ? When did that happen? And how did the difficulties that you've walked through in life really strengthen your faith?
Mm. No, that those are great questions to think through. I grew up like in the church, right? So it becomes like a emotion that you go through, maybe not necessarily a relationship at that point. I had great examples, right, with my parents and grandparents, but I think when I was in college and I had that knee injury that I wasn't expecting, um, that challenged my faith a little bit more to make it personal, and to process and to learn from it. I still, I found some of the things I wrote. Still have journals from that point in time, and it's interesting to look at, the letters I wrote before surgery and going, "Okay, God, like, maybe I didn't pause and listen to you enough." Um, and then as I, navigated through college, I graduated from college and graduated from my master's, and you have that element of you wanting to control what happens next versus allow God to guide what happens next. So I made some decisions because I wanted to control them, control the outcome, not necessarily because that's where I felt like God was leading. We all made those, right? And we can all probably look back and go, okay, I probably could have paused a little bit. So I would say that I have multiple scenarios over life have helped me to mature through that. I think within the cancer journey, that's an area that's been a little bit easier for me to rely on God and his guidance because it's well beyond anything I can control, right? I know that I need to look to him for guidance and to walk with him, right? On the journey and allow that to happen. And that, um, been refined a lot, like, in the faith journey, and I have many people, challenge and go, "Okay, but Diana, you're a good person. Like, why did this happen to you?" And I go, "Well, I thank you. I appreciate that you think I'm a good person. I'm far from perfect." Um, but I don't God never promised us that, life would be easy. He promised he'd be with us, and it would work to the get all things work to the good, right, of those that love him. And there's been a lot of good that has come out of this cancer journey and these tough things happening. And so that is, yes, my faith has been tested more than ever, but I don't, how many people look at me and like, Dana, without, let me give a context to that. I was speaking to a group of physicians, like a medical society group, and I didn't talk about my faith a whole lot. I just talked about a few segments of it. And the gentleman stayed at the end and he's like, a patient wouldn't be able to stand and share like you are doing today without the foundation that you have.
Mm.
And that's where I would say, I mean, there's many people that probably have a faith foundation. They went to church. They haven't figured out how to make it theirs, right? And to make it a real, like, foundation and a way of living. And, I pray and I hope that it doesn't have to be an adversity like mine that helps him to get grounded.
I love what you say about that of just having it be the foundation. And if the foundation isn't strong, then you can't build on it. And whatever you build on it anyway, if even if it's not strong, if you build on it, it's going to fall eventually. But you said something that is really key, I think, that a lot of people might miss, and I'd love for you to maybe even lean into it a little bit more, which is this idea that you're not alone. God is with you as you walk through this, but it's also important to know that you're not alone in everything that you do. There are always people that are around you. I think sometimes we tend to seclude ourselves. We remove ourselves from things, and we go, "Well, I'm alone," and there aren't people around us. When there's plenty of people around us who want to be there for us, that want to get involved. How important is community and being intentional with building that community around you?
I can think through different spots in my journey. So when I was just first diagnosed with cancer, I was maybe this is a mom thing, but we want to take care of everything on our own, right? We were like invincible. Um, and I had to allow people in to help me, right? I couldn't do it all, right? So community is really important in that aspect. It was also important to me. I was asking for help for people. I wanted to be able to return the favor, right? You don't want to be the one that's always drawing on the bank account and never putting anything back in. And so that was always a balance for me. I had to do it differently, right? I couldn't necessarily be the one helping them with their kids when they were helping me with mine. But I could later in life, right? It doesn't have to be in that moment, right? It's making sure you continue that community. One piece though, I just watching how maybe we define community, but it doesn't really feel like real community to me, is whether it's like social media or things like that. And I have learned greatly that in my problems or in my praises, right, to go to God first and review it with Him before making it public, whether it's a true community of people that are really close to me or that social community that maybe isn't really that real, um, to go to your source, go to him first to review it and refine it before you put it out there. That has helped me tremendously to just gain his perspective before I try to put it out there.
I love that you use the refining piece because it kind of takes me where I really was interested in, with this idea of more than before. I love the refining moments of life. I think life is kind of this huge fire that heats up and it causes us uh, to be morphed into something else. So we get to choose whether we go willingly or whether we fight it. There's a term, kintsugi, right? That is a term that you've used. It's a Japanese term. I'd love for you to describe that for everyone of why that is so important, um, to be morphable in life. How has that term played out in your life, and how do you encourage others to do the same?
That term, I hadn't heard it. And I was serving at church. I was determined to serve at church as soon as I could after my surgery. I was home for the weekend from radiation treatments, and I would show up and serve and do coffee and donuts or whatever. And I was asked, Diana, you have every reason for us to take you off the list. You don't need to serve right now. And I just looked at the lady and I said, But I want to serve because there are so many people that don't because they use excuses, and I wanna show them you can still show up, right? And I had somebody walk over to me when I was serving at the coffee and donuts counter one day, and they said, "Diana, you remind me of that Japanese form of art, Kintsugi, because it is taking, broken pieces and of pottery and then putting them back together into a beautiful piece of art, like using gold and to refine it and put it back together into something beautiful. And that's what you're doing." And so I it made me pause and tear up, and then I went and looked it up, and I was like, "You know what? I love that, but that's a reminder for all of us, right? We can take our scars, they may not be visual like mine, or our tough situations, right? And those can be refined and made into something beautiful that helps somebody else. When we let, God be the potter and form us and make us into something beautiful, many blessings can flow out.
It's so good. And I love that you bring up the potter. Yeah, it's a beautiful picture, and we get to choose whether we're malleable, whether we're workable clay, or whether we decide to get hard. And we if we're not malleable, and we get hard, then we tend to have to go through that breaking period, and having to be re-put back together. No matter what, you're gonna be morphed into something. It's whether or not you choose to go through the process willingly, or whether you're kind of dragged through. Diana, I have loved our time together. I have one more question here for you before we wrap up, but for all of you guys that are listening, if this episode resonated with you, I want to encourage you to connect with Diana Fritz. Like, she is just a powerhouse. She's amazing. You've heard her heart. You can find her on LinkedIn, and you can learn more about her leadership, her coaching, her speaking, her amazing book, Uniquely Imperfect, Uniquely Qualified. Whether you're navigating leadership or adversity, or a season of maybe asking of, man, what should I do right now? More is being expected of me. Her work is truly a powerful reminder for all of us that our imperfections don't disqualify us, but they actually prepare us for something great that God is doing. Diana, the show More Than Before came out of this idea that I've always had as a kid, where I couldn't figure out why people just didn't want to get better. Why don't people want to improve? And so I played around with this idea for a long time, and More Than Before just kind of came out. But this concept has really become more than before, and it's truly grown in its concept of, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than anything that we could possibly like put our fingers on. But I'm curious for you, when you hear the phrase "more than before," what does more mean to you right now, as you've gone through life, as you've experienced different things, as you've had miracle after miracle that has impacted your life? What is more now to you than before?
Hmm. I think you gain such perspective, right? Whereas before, right, I always want, like, it could be certain things, right, or something financial, or um this great trip, or what somebody else has, right? And you realize when you navigate through those things, right? That's not really more, right? Like, you just gain a whole different perspective of what truly more is. And what the broader, I think, been trying to think about this for my children, right? Like, what we're here for and what the big picture is, right? And you just gain greater perspective, as whereas before I would have had a totally different lens, right? Of maybe material things, right? But that's not more, right? And so perspective shifts that for
I
me.
love that. It's so beautiful. I thank you so much for jumping on, Diana. You have such a beautiful story. Reach out, connect with her. She is just such a wealth of knowledge, but also she is just such a kind person. So I've just loved having you on. All of you out there, make sure that you share and like this episode. Leave us a review. We'd love to know what you thought about it. And until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.